Hello and welcome to this episode of the Sovereign Society podcast. I'm so pumped to have this conversation with you during this auspicious time. I don't know about you, but this time of year is always my favorite time. It's definitely, I feel the veil very thin with my ancestors and my loved ones that are like, all right, we're preparing you for holiday season.
Mm-hmm.
Spending time with all the family.
Totally.
That's the way I see it. And I'm so excited here because I have Becca Piastrelli here she knows all about the ancestors. She gets it. She understands it. She really is here to empower you about really cultivating this connection with the ancestors. And I know for me, it's been a very interesting month. I just lost an ancestor. She just transitioned on and she was the witch of the family. So I learned a lot of my medicine practices and ceremonies and just reverence to earth and everything through her. And it's like she's here with me to help me continue to navigate through this space and to support you and to share with you what it takes for us to navigate through these times. So I'm just so excited you're here, Becca. And thanks for doing the work that you do, because I feel like it was kind of lost for a while, like the ancestral connection. And I feel like it's so beautiful to see how it's like coming back up. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh yeah, big time. It's awesome.
Yeah. So I want to know, like, what has inspired you to dive deeper into the ancestral realm and the healing, and what has brought you to share this medicine with the world?
Yeah, well, honestly, it was the election of Donald Trump. I mean, and I say that, I mean, that awoke a lot within our country.
Yeah.
For me, it had me awaken more to the fact that we live in a culture of white supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
And the ways in which I was trying to like hope that was over, or this whole idea like maybe we have a post-racial society and we had a Black president, and I was just like in my spiritual world, just like vibing high and witching it up. And then I had this like slap in the face, which it felt like for me, I'll just speak for myself personally, where I was just like, wait, what? And Charlottesville happened and all these things were happening where I was feeling really confused about the history of this country, and like reading about, taking down monuments because those people, owned slaves, enslaved folks back in the day. And I was like, I'm white, and I know that on my mother's side were some of the original settlers of the colony known as Maine. Like, I'm really resistant to looking down there, but I'm such a spiritual being,
Yeah.
what's that about? So I've spent the last 2 years really, I guess it happened before Donald Trump, but that sort of like time where we felt that shaking up of our consciousness and that sort of shock to our system, that I said like, oh, I'm from a lineage. And I've always sort of thought that because I was a white woman, I was cultureless. I was, I don't have like a strong tie in my family to like any sort of ethnic identity. And turns out that's a big lie. I had to go looking. So for me, as a leader in the spiritual community, I felt like it was a way to get into deeper integrity for me to understand and research and journey with the people that came before me, including the ones who didn't do things I maybe agree with today. And it's taken me on a journey of like through the burning times. It's taken me on a journey through my ancestors' relationship with race. It's taken me on a journey to like come back to earth practices in the deepest, most potent way that no like sweat ceremony or anything else I'd ever done, like tobacco ceremony, ever could give me. No shade to that, but there's something deeper I found when I started like burning the plants my ancestors burned and like relearned the rituals and holidays my ancestors learned.
Mm.
It provided a deeper sense of belonging that I think I was looking for in other places.
Ooh, I hear you. Yeah, that was the thing that I also am with you, because I remember like my aunt, for instance, like all of my family migrated from Italy, and my mother is a first generation American. So it's like very strong. There's still a lot of very strong ties in my upbringing, with the holidays. And, like, for instance, like All Souls Day, we set the table. And
Mhm.
like, that's what we do. We set the table, we have photos. That's like the Italians, like Dia de los Muertos. Like, we have our tables set. And that's what I remember doing since I was a little kid. And even like, I love preparing that. Like, that for me is like my ceremony and my ritual of honoring my ancestors, and also seeing like where their head was, what has been like their motivation and their drive, and seeing again, like you said, what resonates with me, what doesn't. And I can stay true to myself while also paying respect to what I came up through, because I also know my ancestors want me to be happy, and they want me to also stay true to myself.
Yeah. That's so beautiful that custom tradition has lasted through your family. And I love that you have such a tie to Italy in just a few generations. Like the whiteness in me is deeply jealous of that feeling. Though
Oh,
I'm cultivating the rituals again. There's like a reclamation
yeah.
happening over on my end. But I think that's so beautiful that you already know that like you have your own Dia de los Muertos. It's called All Souls Day, and it's connected to, that's really connected to Catholicism within
Right.
like the Romans, Italian expression. Like the history of that is beautiful. And it's tied into this time when the veils are thin. Cultures all over the world revered their ancestors, particularly now because we watch the earth, northern hemisphere, the earth is dying, right? We're coming to winter. It's a time where you think of death. So it
Hmm.
just all makes sense, we don't just have to look to um, Halloween, and we don't just have to look to Mexico. Like there are so many traditions. Like I'm of Celtic ancestry. It's called Samhain, looks like Samhain.
Right.
It's known as the Witch's New Year because that was like the end of the season. And then you go into the dreaming times, and that it was known as the Great Hunt. So you're setting the table for your ancestors, and my ancestors were like, oh crap, like spirits are gonna come through. We better like carve gourds into the faces to let them know that like, oops, spirits are already here. Don't come in. Like that's the origin of jack-o'-lanterns. Like it's so beautiful how that has worked its way through history to like today. And I love that you have it in your practice right now, because that's what I'm really a stand for, is that we all sort of come back into that ancestral knowledge that still is in us, because the ancestors are here with us. They're like whispering.
Totally.
We just
Yeah.
gotta listen.
Yeah, for sure. And I know, like, with my aunt, she used to say this, like, prayer. Like, she would do this ritual every Christmas Eve, because that's another big one for us,
Yeah.
where we have, like, the 7 fishes, where you eat 7 different kinds of fish. And
Yeah.
she would do this thing called malocchio, where it's like you say this prayer that you're only allowed to say out loud on Christmas Eve, and you bless water, and you use oil, and it will tell you if there's been, like, evil casted on you. And then once you see it the way that the oil spots are, you burn it. And then you keep doing the cycle over and over again until you have these perfect dots where they're just like solid.
Whoa, oil divination.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so when my aunt passed, she was a lot, well, my mom's sister, she knows it too, but she's very Christian. And so
Yeah.
my mom told my aunt, her sister, she was like, the only thing I want from Zia is that prayer. And I want it too, because that's something that I want to keep going and keep respecting. And even though like there's other rituals or ceremonies that I do that even aren't of my ancestry, I
Mhm.
still have so much respect for them, because it's all mythology. It's
Yeah.
just, as my grandfather would say, same story, different actor. And so just depending on the energy and the influence of the spaces and the cities and the areas, they're all that's the community. And this is very strong of connection. You know, we all recognize amongst each other, like, oh, you're doing this today. I see why. Or like, oh, let's come in together. And I think, like I said, I feel like we lost that for a while.
Yeah, we have, through just like the rise of modern culture and assimilation, you know, the immigration story of coming to new worlds and trying to assimilate and leaving things behind. And it's, you're right, there has been like a woo resurgence, but there's also been like an ancestral connection resurgence. Just look at like how many genetic tests are like flying off the shelves right now. There's a hunger to connect with the ancestors, whether you like consider yourself spiritual, woo woo or not. There is a hunger alive. Like whenever I talk about it to anyone, there's just like a brightening of the eyes, because we want to know we come from something, because we do. We come from a long line. The oldest clan mother of my mitochondrial DNA is lived 40,000 years ago. And like, to know how many generations is that? So many.
Wow.
You know,
Yeah,
like,
and it's important to also know, because this is what I teach a lot in my courses Thrive and like my talk on the podcast and just in being, like, it's important to know that what you do today is healing 7 generations before you and after you. So when you have a better understanding of how your ancestors behaved or their habits, and you're seeing how they're actually affecting you now because it's part of your DNA, and you can say, enough is enough. I'm ready to transmute that. I'm ready to shift that. And I'm ready to like be on the path where I can be a citizen of the world today. You know, like there's a lot that people have to go through. There was a lot of like racism, like we were talking about, that was like generations before. And that was just the norm, you know? And then here comes us millennials and we're like, this doesn't serve, does it? No, it really doesn't. So let's go back and make peace with our past that we may not even be fully conscious of. And let's start transmuting that from the inside out. Wouldn't you agree with that?
oh, 100%. Like, that's the thing, is this whole idea of like linear time isn't real, you know, and this idea of ancestral time or whole time or spiralic time, that you're saying you can go 7 generations forward instead of 7 generations back. I love that, because yeah, you can work with your ancestors in any way to heal, it. I mean, some of us come in with deep traumas. I came in with many, 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 like countless generations of alcohol abuse, like intense alcoholism, and like the suffering around that one thing, like I could feel in my system. You know, I feel things that I know didn't happen to me, but like happened to me, you know, like not in an embodied way, but like I feel the trauma. And so I've been working so much to like process that, because I don't want it to carry on. I want to be a good ancestor that is part of healing.
I love when you say that. That's so good.
Yeah. I mean, this is the depth of it, you know, it's like I mean, I just think about the burning times in Europe, where like all these powerful women and men too, who knew of medicine, who knew how to heal, who were powerful, who were respected, who owned land, were like brutalized and murdered and tortured in front of other women. And so the women who survived that, who somehow survived that terror campaign, have had to like thrive, have had to live with that trauma. And that's why I also like talk about relationships with women, and now healing relationships with women. Sisterhood is kind of difficult. And it's because, we've had to like, when we gather in circle, or have you and I having conversations like this that are super real, and we're not just like crap talking over wine watching The Bachelor. It's just like, that's healing work. That's ancestral healing work that we're doing in these
And when
moments.
women come together in groups, it's even more powerful. We are the creators, right? Like we are the ones that are creating life. Like we are carrying life. So that's why I feel like there's been such a rise of sisterhood. I mean, granted, it's also the Aquarian age. So with the age of Aquarius, it's about cooperation and community versus competition. Like we're collaborating more, we're understanding what our strengths are, honoring our weaknesses, and reaching out for that support to help us together lift, because we realize we don't have to do this journey alone anymore too. Like that lone wolf complex is
Yeah.
dissolving.
Hi. Yeah. Yeah. It's true. It's like all this stuff is rising within us. We're remembering, we're reclaiming, we're coming together, and that's ancestral healing work. So that's a frame that I take with the work here, is like, you're not doing this just for yourself. You're doing this to heal all the ancestors who couldn't do it when they were embodied, and you're being a good ancestor yourself for your descendants, and this is deep healing work.
Yeah. And what was coming through as you were saying that, I really want to talk more about like this presidency as why this is happening, what I've been hearing in
Mhm.
meditations. These are the triggers we've needed to heal the lineages and to prepare for the children to come. Like this has just been an opportunity for us to see like, okay, how can this happen for us, not against us? And in a recent medicine ceremony I did, I saw that like what's happening in the world is an illusion, right? Like what is real is love. What is real, our connection. And everything that's happening is all a distraction that's trying to prevent us from going in deep, doing the work, unless you are able to see the hawk perspective and see like, hey, what a beautiful opportunity for me to dive in deep. This is like permission for me to make change. This is
Mm.
permission for me to learn more. This is permission for me to say enough is enough. Like what a
Yeah.
beautiful opportunity for us to reclaim our power during with what's happening. So I know for me, that's what I've been really focusing on too, is shifting that perspective of like, how can I choose to see like this as an opportunity for me to rise? Because the majority of people who are watching the news are our ancestors that are still alive, and
Yeah.
so they are still they're in our fields. Like we're still connected with them. They're part of our family, and they're still in this human experience. So with them being in this human experience, we're still connected to them. Like there's no accident that it's like with our grandparents that are still alive. Most of them have dementia, and most of them have Alzheimer. They're so out of their head that they need to learn to tune into their hearts. And there's karma that they are clearing too for the lineage. It's
Mm.
deep healing that this is still part of their soul contract as to why they're here, that they still haven't worked through. And the other thing is like our ancestors in recent generations, they were the part of the Great Depression, right? So this is again
Mm.
why our generation, we're shifting the conversation around money. We're shifting the conversation about what it means to work. We don't have to we can work hard, but it's not that thing, working hard just by being who you are, by focus, like staying focused. We don't have to be making it so tough on ourselves. We can be in this flow when we stay true to ourselves, stay true to our gifts, and connect with the ancestors on the other side through that
Mm.
subtle energy where they can remind us like, you are not of this world. What you are experiencing, yes, you are connected with the earth, but that is very different than connecting with the world that is collectively happening. And all it takes is 144,000 of us to wake up. That's it. That's how we shift the new paradigm.
Mm.
144,000 of us living from our heart space. And that's how we're healing the lineages behind, healing the lineages before, and healing this planet.
Where's that 144,000 from?
I've learned that from Deepak Chopra like
Oh.
years ago. Yeah, when after I was struck by lightning, I was working at the Chopra Center, and he shared that too. And there's been many, many sources that are saying 144,000 because that
Wow.
equals 9, right? 4 plus
Uh,
1 is 9. So 9 is a very powerful number, and it's also the number of the subtle body, like we talk about in Kundalini Yoga, which is like the little hints that someone's there with you. So let's say like your favorite song is playing, like that reminded you of your grandfather that's on the other side. That's him sharing, he's with you. So this is
mm.
what we also have to do as we navigate through this world, connecting with the lineage through the signs. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, big time. Big time. And I think it's more than just like every time I see a butterfly, I think of my grandmother. It's like reaching out to them. I tell all my clients to engage with the ancestors in dream space.
Mm-hmm.
So because dream, before it became this place of like Freudian randomness that dream space is the original divination tool of our ancestors. Before we could pull cards, or look into crystals, the dream space was a place of wisdom. And it's the place of thin veils. You can go any time of year.
Hmm.
So I ask people who work with me to focus on one ancestor. And if you can't find one, or if none of them feel safe, to just like be like a good and well and bright ancestor, and ask a very specific question before you go to sleep. And it's been incredibly powerful for me. It took a few months to like really trust, but like I've been working with my mother's mother for a year now, where we are with each other in dream space, and sometimes in waking journey space, where I am with her and she is talking to me. I mean, she told me, you need to go to the island of apples to meet your baby. And I was like, what's that? Turns out it's Avalon in England, where Glastonbury is, the ancient King Arthur, like the legend that defines the people that I come from, the Arthurian legend of the priestesses of Avalon. And so I'm headed there. I'm probably there when this goes live, actually. So it's just like that came from my grandmother, who is no longer living, but that's how powerful it can be.
Yeah, I wanted to hear more about like you going on these pilgrimages, because I know like it's so healing to be able to go into these journeys and like trust that you're gonna find something there.
Yeah, it's super wild and totally scary the first time you do it, but it's sort of like my deepest practice. And I do acknowledge that there's a certain level of privilege that comes with being able to like take off and fly places. And it's just one of the highest valued things in my life. It's one of my highest priorities. And it's all come from dreams. So it started with going to Ireland, the autumn equinox, so almost over a year ago. And I went literally, I was like, I know I'm going to Ireland, and I literally have no plan. And I'm the girl with the plan. I have no plan. I am called, that like when I am called, and I'm called enough to like book a ticket, and go. And had so many fears around like expectations, not meeting expectations, and it just being like, like bad breakfast and getting lost on Irish freeways or something. But it was, I mean, it was so powerful. And in none of the ways I could have envisioned or expected, just to put my hands on the green grass of Ireland. I just wept as soon as I got there, just wept, and then would make my way to sacred sites. One of the beautiful things about Ireland in particular is they've been able to hide the goddess in plain sight. You think about Stonehenge and how like there's a long line and there's a fence around it, and I get it, they're protecting the stones, but like in Ireland, there are stone circles and wells everywhere, and there are people, keepers, who watch over it day and night, men and women. And there's like tech companies are there now, and like it's a modern society, but like in the myths, the ancient ways of the ancestors are there. So I just went to them and would meet people and would hear stories and would have experiences that were just so deep and meaningful for my ancestral body. I say I felt as old as stone there. I felt ancient, and I didn't need to like read all the books or read all the blurbs, or I could if I wanted to, but I just spent one day just laying on a hill, the hill of Tara, where the goddess used to crown the king, the first king, the first ever king that was chosen by the goddess, the land, the divine feminine. I just laid there for hours crying and like talking to the old hawthorn trees. And so now I really just like doing that. It's sort of like time travel, and it feels important in my work to remember that I come from these lineages, from these places that have connection to the earth very deeply.
Yeah, and there's so many of those practices, that again, I feel like are really rising up right now.
Yeah.
And it's becoming norm. Like maybe because we're just so used to it in the spiritual community, because we're seeing so many of our people, but the conversations and the interest, I feel like, is definitely rising. And there's definitely like a curiosity, like we talked about, like the DNA tests and all these things that are happening. So what would you suggest to someone who's like, I really want to go on this pilgrimage. I really want to discover more of me that I don't even see, but that I'm really interested in? Because I was even talking about this with on episode 56 with Shelby, where she was talking about how she's been really into witchcraft more and like studying more
Yeah.
of her lineage. And so there are a lot of sacred women that are very like curious right
Yeah. So a lot of us don't have like one lineage. We have many,
now. Mm,
and so right now I'm really into my Celtic lineage, which is modern day Ireland, British Isles, even like parts of France and Germany and Scandinavia, which I know both from genealogical records I have ancestors from and from my blood DNA or my spit DNA test. So that can be really overwhelming. And so I say go to the folklore, go to the stories, the myths, the creation stories of those people. There are so many books and like YouTube channels and podcasts. And I would just say, look up old Celtic folklore, look up old Slavic folklore or Russian folklore, Italian folklore. Oh my gosh, there's such good stuff out
mm.
there to learn and share. Or I would say engage with the traditional foods, like put it in your body, look up old traditional foods and before you go on pilgrimage, because there's something about rising that energy and calling and activating the energy within yourself wherever you live now, like listening to the music, reading the stories, eating some of the foods, and then
Immersing yourself in the culture and how it was living then.
to call your ancestors into your body, and to sort of get out of linear time that like we all struggle with, like it's a thing, but sort of like get yourself into that timeless state. And then I think the approach to pilgrimage becomes way more of a surrender as opposed to like a panic attack about it being you messing it up or like the right itinerary or like, will I meet, I just think just like it's about going and trusting what unfolds for you. Yeah. And if anyone's of the same lineage I'm sharing, you can also, I share a lot of this on my blog about what I'm discovering. I just want to make sure that like, I'm not an expert in all folks' lineages. Like this is very much a personal process because so many of us, I mean, even you being Italian, right? Like, Italy, every little micro part of Italy has a different like way it prepares eggs, and like
Totally.
music and culture. And because before the invention of borders, your land mass or like where your people lived, like the mountain, the water, where the moon was in the sky, that defined, what animals were there, what plants were native there. That defined your culture and your identity.
Mm.
So there's a little bit of that too, like trusting what you're called to, trusting where you're called to, trusting what happens for you,
Mm.
and know that it's a lifetime's journey.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, one of my cousins, because my dad's one of 8. So on my dad's side, I have 14 cousins. And one of them, he's super interested in learning about the lineage and the ancestors and seeing that. And it's also really powerful to understand the power of your last name too. And
Mm.
seeing what that energy is. Like my last name, Riccio, translates to royalties. There's a lot of like old royal like energy to carry on. So that's how, to me, it's like, okay, well, how can I carry on and respect my lineage, my name, by showing up and being a leader? To me, that's what that represents. Like old royalty was about leadership.
Mm.
And so to me, it's like, how can I continue to be a leader to empower other people to go that way? So he's very into that. My grandmother on my dad's side, she's Celtic as well. Like she would be an O'Tully if she was like one more generation with her last name. Um,
Yeah.
so that's something that like has been coming up for me. She's my last living ancestor. And so so like I'm very curious on like diving in more and like having more conversation with her.
Talk to her.
Really understand like what that is, because like I said, my mom's full-blooded Italian, my dad's half Italian, and then he's a quarter Irish and a quarter English. So my
Mm.
grandmother, like having that kind of roots, but that's also been part of my healing journey too, considering that I'm all from Europe.
Yeah.
It's like I've been diving in deeper to more South American traditions
Mm.
and the indigenous traditions, because I grew up on native lands. Like I grew up in Palm
Mm.
Springs, which was all Native Americans. Like my high school is on native land. Like I'm very connected in that realm of like the desert being very strong with the Native Americans, but also honoring South America, you know, and being able, again, like we're talking about, there was no borders. So it's like, how can I allow myself to be a global citizen where I'm honoring all these different lineages, all these different traditions that can help me shape into who I am today, where I can see and understand other people, where they're coming from, and understand their DNA and what's inspiring them on a deep, 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 deep cellular level that they're completely don't know about. So that's been very interesting as a European descent to come in here participating in like ayahuasca ceremonies or like hape tobacco ceremonies, and like really respecting these other lineages, because
Mm.
that's just a way I feel like we can really heal the planet too, is understanding the different cultures and really just like seeing how fascinating all of these mythologies and these folklores and these traditions are. Like what a beautiful experience that you get to become witness to in this human experience.
Yeah, and I think it's really important what you said that really just sort of resonated with me was that you're coming to these ceremonies and these communities and these traditions as a European woman. And so there's less of like a colonizer, right? Like there's less of you coming in and taking and saying, it's mine now, you know, which can happen in spiritual communities, as opposed to saying, I am a European descended white woman. I honor you. I give you I give you monetary exchange. Like I see you, I want to support you. It's a very different reverential experience than a like, what's here for me, you know, which it would be continuing the sort of European legacy of colonization that has been so damaging, particularly to Native communities
Mm-hmm.
here on what they call Turtle Island. So I think that's beautiful the way you said that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's just the way that like, you know, I grew up in California raised by Europeans. So like my grandfather was very dark skinned, and like I was like, you know, I remember like in third grade bringing a blood orange to school because it's like part of like my tradition.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh my God, you're eating blood," when you're like 8 years old, like, you know, and that was
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
traumatizing for me. Like it made me at that moment, you're 8 years old, like shameful, you know, that like I
Yeah.
wasn't like the other kids. And so that's also been a huge part of my healing journey. It's just like embracing what makes me unique and embracing there's no accident why I chose to be of European descent in this lifetime. And so how
Yeah.
can I pay reverence to that? How can I respect that? How can I honor that and empower other people to get out of like the basic bitch mentality of living in this world and see like there's something very much deeper that's happening here that like you have an opportunity to dive into if you choose and if you want. It's all based on, you know, we have free will, but if there is that curiosity, go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, I married an Italian. So my last name,
Oh,
Piastrelli, I'm not Italian. And do you know what Piastrelli means? It
well,
doesn't
tell me.
mean, it doesn't mean royalty. It means a man who tiles.
Amazing. Well, that's the thing. Like tile work is like massive.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Tim, my husband, and I went on pilgrimage to Italy this past May. We spent 3 weeks there, and we went to Tuscany, which is where his grandfather immigrated
Beautiful.
from. And we saw so many older men doing like working with their hands, like putting up tile or like laying cement or like
That's what my
rebuilding
grandfather
stuff.
was.
And my husband was in near tears. He was in near
Oh,
tears watching these men work. I mean, at one point, you know, like they were redoing a sewer in this old medieval town, and there were all these like old men, arms crossed, standing on the sidewalk watching it. And then there was my husband standing there, arms crossed, watching. And I was like, this is ancestral. These are his people. His people, the man who tiles, like they need to work with their hands. They're creative.
totally.
They are the sacred masculine. Like that, I saw that, and I was like, this is the most. And I never. This is what I was saying about you never really know what's going to happen on pilgrimage. That was the moment. It wasn't like with the Black Madonna in the sacred church that, you know, that was amazing. No, it was like watching my husband
Real
watch the
life.
men work. And I was like, the man who tiles, oh my gosh, this is powerful.
Amazing. Yeah, my grandfather, he was a cement worker. And
Ah.
my dad was in the stone business as well. It's hilarious. Yeah, I think, like I said, it's really amazing when and you don't need to have this big extravagant thing. It's the little things, like the subtle
Yeah.
messages coming through when you least expect it. That's when it's like the bells ring and the aha moments happen, and oh my god, this is all making sense now. Yeah, I remember I was 16 in Rome, and I bawled. I'm 16 years old,
Mm.
bawling in the middle of the piazza, like in Rome, just like I went with my grandparents. My mom, she wanted to make sure that my sister and I went before while my grandparents were still healthy, to Italy for the summer. And so I was 16, my sister was 11. And I just remember being in Italy, just bawling and crying and just like feeling like, wow, like just to see this beauty that was built and how that is in my lineage, that I can create that same kind of beauty in my own way.
Yeah.
You know, when you're able to see it in that way, it's like, oh my gosh, so much gratitude and just like so much reverence to
Yeah.
honor where I've come from, and to honor like the path that brought me to this conversation right here right now, even when I wasn't in my physical body.
Yeah.
You know, it's a deeper sense of gratitude and appreciation when you're doing these deep pilgrimages and you're like doing the work and you're like really immersing yourself in these cultures and these systems and traditions. And I think that's what's also coming up, is that there's a higher call for tradition to also
Yeah.
rise.
Right. I think that's attached to identity. I think a lot of us just like don't know who we are on the deepest level. And we're just like kind of like mimicking who we see on Instagram, whatever it is. Like,
Right.
but like to really know who you are and to be in that inquiry of who am I think you have to look at who you come from.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And then that's how we're going to heal the world we're living in right now. It's just to really like get out of our comfort zones and like what we see and dive in. Like
Yeah. And
really
stop
take
sitting
that,
on the sidelines for sure.
immerse yourself in that space. So yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's been very fascinating to see, like I said, watching the rise and of like the people curious about their lineage and seeing like, okay, so you did this test, now what? Right? Like you did this DNA test, what are you doing about it?
Right. A lot of people just stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're talking in this time, right, of ancestors when the veils are thin, whether you resonate with a certain holiday around this time or not, this is a time where one would say the ancestors are near. And so maybe to take your test further, like, do you have a photo of an ancestor? Like, put it on your altar. Do you want to write a letter to them? Write one now. On Halloween, if maybe just in addition to like a jack-o'-lantern and some candy for the kids, like leave out a little altar outside,
Mm.
like pour what was your grandparents like favorite drink, pour it in a glass and put it outside with their picture, like call to them, be with them. Even if you're like, is this real? Am I pretending? Just like go with it, because
Mm.
for like all of Earth's being around, this is the time when that other world is near. So play with it.
Hmm. Yeah, and coming up to the election coming up and the holidays, like this is a really powerful time to really like listen to that spiritual guidance and
Yeah.
that inner connection, knowing that with all the madness that's going on outside and around us, after the chaos comes order. And so this is all part of the process to wake us up, to shift our habits, to shift our behavior, and to remember what's actually important. And
Mm.
so that's why I love like the All Souls Day. Like I said, like I'll have my whole table set up with my candles and I clear the whole house. But what would you suggest? You mentioned some things for an altar. What else would you suggest for like people who want to prepare this altar for their loved ones that have passed on?
Well, I always say bring into your home nature. I'm always trying to help us remember that we're not disconnected from the like natural world. We are a part of it. And, this is a time where like leaves are dropping, sort of depends where you are in the world. But I like to bring in acorns or leaves or pine cones or even like late blooming flowers and adorn my altar in that way to really honor the season, the seasonality. Our ancestors lived with the seasons. They didn't have
Definitely.
clocks, they didn't have time. They lived with the seasons. And this time of year was the end of the growing season. We have harvest, and then it's like the completion of harvest. It's the waning. This is why the veils are thin. It's sort of like death before the
Mhm.
great dreaming times of winter, and
A
then
lot of
rebirth,
reflection.
deep introspective
Yeah.
time. So it's a great time to journal and put the journal on your altar. I really recommend writing a letter to an ancestor, known or unknown. Writing a letter, putting the letter up there.
Asking for
Apple,
guidance, right? Like asking them to help guide. Yeah.
for sure. Also, if you're interested in working more with plants, apple is a very powerful source of plant magic this time of year. It was the last sweet food our ancestors could eat um, before the winter comes. And also, if you cut in the center of an apple, you see it's a pentacle, and the pentacle represents our human bodies. If you stretch out your arms and your feet and your head, that's 5 points. And so, like,
It's
that's
also the five elements.
also the elements. It's
Yes.
I like to put apples basically everywhere right now and just work with them, eat them, drink them, whatever it is. Yeah, I like what you're saying about asking for guidance, like to really know you're not alone. Candlelight, candles, set the mood, but also candlelight is a really beautiful way to remind yourself you're never alone. That sort of movement, that flickering flame. They say we live in the age of loneliness right now. We're more connected than ever before, but we feel more disconnected and more lonely than ever before. And this is a time when that shadow is sort of thickening to really lean into like, oh, we're really not alone. And we really can ask for help. And we really are connected to this greater spiralic sense of being, sense of time, sense of healing. And this is like when you're so magical, trust in that.
Mm, I love that. Yeah, and what's super amazing, like I was telling you, I was telling before we recorded to Becca, I was like, I like since we agreed to this, I've been seeing so much of you.
Yeah.
Episode 55, I had Sarah Jenks, and you're gonna be
Yeah.
doing Magic Week on the 30th with Sarah at her farm at Hawthorne Farms. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, this synchronicity, like, I knew this was the conversation that needed to be had right now and shared
Right.
just to see, like, okay, cool, more members of the Sovereign Society coming through and connecting and really understanding, like, the importance of connection during these times and the importance of the community and sharing this magic and this medicine. More so than magic, it's medicine
Yeah.
for the soul, And so I thought that was just like the wildest synchronicity too.
The web we're weaving together. It's pretty
It's so
cool.
amazing. I just feel so grateful that I get to hold this space. This has been so powerful. Okay,
Mm.
so to wrap up, I want to do a lightning round. This is where I ask some quick questions. Okay, so what would you say? What is your definition of sovereignty?
Oh my gosh. So I just had my like ass kicked by an elder about this because I was like personal power. And this woman, Sharon Blackie, who is a folklorist in Ireland, was like, no, the original definition of sovereign is like the power of the earth and that you are the earth. That like the earth is like the great source of power, but that you are within it. So it's not about you, it's about you and earth together. I was like, whoa. So there.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, what would you say to younger Becca today?
Oh.
Everyone has that response.
Because you call to mind your little girl and you're like, I love you so much. Um, I'd say trust yourself. Trust in the ways that you're different. She wanted to belong so bad, and she just like hid and put masks on and tried all the things to be all the ways she wasn't. I would just say trust that it's going to make sense. It's all going to make sense, and you're going to feel so good.
Amazing. Okay, so based off of your work working with the ancestors and stuff, what is your biggest intention for, showing up for them and living as yourself, but also living to pay respect to your ancestors?
So my biggest intention is to be a good ancestor myself.
I love that.
Yeah, so to remember that I am an ancestor in this time, and as much as I'm learning and healing, I'm also leading and setting an example and being taught and healed by my descendants yet to be embodied.
I love that. That's so juicy. Okay, what would you say is a very strong animal totem that you've been really connecting with and with lately?
Mm. Well, it was the lioness all last year.
Hmm.
Yeah, and nothing's come through yet, but lioness and I are completing. I really needed to feel like ferocity, particularly after the election where I felt so like weak and hopeless, and lioness and her sister pack was so powerful, but I sort of feel it completing, and I feel like it might be the buck or the deer coming through, but I can't say for certain yet.
I honor that. I
Yeah.
respect that. Yeah. So as my spiritual name with Car, so my spiritual name Shivinder Kaur, it's the lioness who
Oh, yeah.
transmutes negativity and generates a new world by embracing God's light. That's like my spiritual name that I was gifted.
Oh, I feel it. You have such lioness vibes. It's awesome. It's so good.
Leo rising. Thanks.
Well, my Leo sun loves your Leo rising.
That's why we're here. We Leos, we like to hang around each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
What would you say is, what else is inspiring you right now?
Oh, the colder weather.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in Northern California, so this is like our hot time, but like the subtle ways the seasons are working their way in. So it's like the light just gets a little more orangey, and then the evenings are getting a little colder, and like I'm wearing my like Irish wool sweater right now because like it's finally cool enough to do that. There's something about the way the weather is changing. It feels ancestral, it feels comforting, it feels inviting.
Yes. And what is your intention with your podcast, Belonging?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's still kind of an experiment. I
Mm-hmm.
think I've only done 10 episodes, but it's really to get us to, first of all, admit that we all feel a lack of belonging in our lives in some way. It's like not weakness to admit that because everyone feels that way. And then to get super real about all aspects of that, just like irreverent real talk, none of this bypassing. Like, what are our experiences of not feeling belonging? What are our habits we do? And like teaching and leading from that place of like real talking about how we can cultivate a sense of belonging within ourselves, with the earth, with each other, in this new paradigm we're creating, and in this paradigm that we're helping to dismantle. We have to love and belong to ourselves if we're going to be doing this deep work.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so where could we find more of you?
Well, you can find me beccapiastrelli.com, Piastrelli. But if you like Google a version of that, usually I come up. And I'm the same on Becca Piastrelli on Instagram. And then I do have a podcast called Belonging, and you can search Belonging wherever you get your podcasts or go to belongingpodcast.com.
Amazing. And then one last question. Whatever is coming up for you right now that you want to share with whoever's listening, what's arising? Let's honor it.
I think there might be some people listening who feel a deep disconnection with their ancestry, maybe because of like adoption or for mental health reasons have had to separate from family of origin. And I want you to know I really honor that. And that doesn't preclude you from doing this work. It just might look a little different for you. That you can still talk to them in dream space. You can do a DNA test. Some people don't feel safe doing a DNA test. You don't need to do a DNA test to work with your ancestors. You don't even need to know their names or have their pictures. There's a lot of privilege in being able to do that. But It is a birthright to be able to connect with and honor your ancestors in whatever way is accessible and feels safe for you.
Yeah, thank you for that. I have so many friends that have been adopted, and
Yeah.
they're all there is a lot more of that curiosity too, of like, well, where do I come from?
Right. And within that is sort of like belonging stuff, like, why was I given up? Or like, I understand why, but like my inner little girl doesn't
The
understand why.
abandonment core wound. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. So if you're interested in just diving in deep, we just really invite you to do it, because there's no better time than now. I just feel like we're living in a world where we can use as much support in this realm and on the other side to help us navigate through, because whatever we're experiencing or whatever we're enduring, we were made for this. And that's what I just really want you guys to understand. Like, you were made for whatever experience you're going through. You will survive, you will thrive. It just takes your willingness to understand the patterns that have been holding you back so that you can show up and pave your own path.
Mm.
That's what I was feeling from that.
Yeah. And that our ancestors survived really intense times,
Definitely.
war and famine, and were resilient, birthed their babies, nourished them so that they could have more descendants. So that's in us.
Yes. And that when you were saying that, what I was seeing is like when the Kundalini rises, it doesn't go up and down. It's like spiralized. So I
Mm.
feel like just knowing, being a historian and understanding culture as a sociologist, this is the loop that's coming back around right now. This is the same kind of energy that our ancestors had to go through on a regular basis that we are experiencing to heal and transmute once and for all.
Mm. Yeah.
This is the
Beautiful.
healing journey of the lineage. Like, this is what it takes for us to really go there. This is what it takes for us to really understand that we will get through this. We shall persevere. All it takes is us staying true to ourselves, connecting with our loved ones on the other sides, and connecting with our communities through our rituals, through our ceremonies, through our traditions, and to embrace them all.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say thank you so much, Becca, for coming in, for doing this work. I'm so excited to hear that, like, diving into the ancestors it's becoming a norm. Like, there's a lot more interest in it, and there's a lot more reverence arising in that. So I just really thank you for doing the work that you do and encouraging others to take the leap of faith, to trust in their flow and in their process, and to dive in deeper to understand where they came from, where we all came from, and let's start paying more respect and reverence to that. So thank you again for being here with me today and sharing your wisdom and your medicine. And we're just so grateful. I'm speaking
Mm.
on everyone that's listening, but we're just super grateful. So thank you, sister, for being here and doing your medicine and sharing your work.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on, and thank you for doing your work. This has been a true honor.
Oh, thanks, sister. Blessings. I see you. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. Go check out Becca. All the links are in the show notes below. And let us know what you thought of this episode, if this has been inspiring you to dive in deeper during this fall into winter season. Like, really start respecting and understanding as the holidays come up too, that everyone is doing their best based on their level of awareness. And when you're around your family and you're around your ancestors, understand that there is a lot of lineage work that they also are working through, that they may be completely unconscious to. So this is an opportunity for you to jump into this holiday season feeling empowered, feeling centered, feeling grounded, and not allowing the influence of your family, who can be our biggest triggers, steer you off course, because they have their own journey of discovering who they are. So thank you again for listening, and we'll be seeing you soon. Take care.